Writing prompt. He's dead. Finally, that son of a bitch got what he deserved, Charlie said as he reads the headline of the newspaper. Candy extraordinaire Wonka has passed away. Now Charlie sits and remembers the true events of the day he and the other children visited Wonka'S factory. By Strawberrycocoa. Charles Bucket placed the paper down to his side and folded his hands in his lap quietly, deep in thought. He closed his eyes, and visions of madness swam across the back of his eyelids. Nightmares that hadn't reared their snarling, terrible heads for decades now. Nightmares he had thought he had left behind. Charles steeled himself, squaring up his shoulders, flicked the last drops of morning coffee from his mustache. He flicked a button, watching the wall in front of him slide open. In the main office of Bucket's Wonderful Confections, a simple bookcase slid to the side, the hidden doorway to Charles' living space revealing itself. Not for the first time, he wished it had not been made necessary to set his living space in a permanent panic room, but such was the nature of the place he had inherited that day. On the factory floor, he looked over gleaming conveyor belts, the giant vats ready to be heated for boiling and simmering, and the machines precision-aligned for molding and cutting chocolate into delightful shapes. All was quiet in the morning still. The workers wouldn't be here for another hour. At this time of the morning, only 2 divisions of the company were present: administration and perimeter defense. Looking over the modernized mechana of his factory, Charles found himself flashing back to the day he had won ownership of it, to the contest and the tour. He remembered Wonka, the living fever dream of a man with his manic smile and spastic mannerisms. And he remembered what he had seen that day, the terrors he had been forced to cover up. A stipulation of the inheritance contract. To attain ownership of Wonka'S inheritance, he had needed to tell all who asked a wild and whimsical story of wonder and magic contained within the factory walls. Sometimes he almost believed it. Sometimes he almost believed poor Veruca had fallen harmlessly down a chute to be picked up from a garbage bin, not shoved into a grinder while gibbering laughter drowned out her screams. Sometimes he almost believed Mike had been comically shrunken to the size of an insect. The stretching part was true, however. Charles let some truth slip in where he could. But Mike had not been cartoonishly stretched back to his proper size by a taffy puller. Lashed his hands to a wall and his feet to the bumper of a semi-truck. Started the engine and he was stretched. Charles could still hear Mike's screams and the agonized wails of his mother. The Oompa Loompas? Oh, how Charles wished they had been a fabrication. He told the world of Wonka's silly little men that ran the factories day to day. This may have been his greatest lie, and his most unforgivable sin. Not telling the world how much danger they were in. Lost in his reverie, Charles didn't notice his head of perimeter defense until the burly man was almost on top of him.
"Sir!"
the armed and armored man yelled.
"We have a situation!"
Charles spun to see what was going on and followed the pointing finger of his head of defense. On a far wall, there were gashes in the plaster, 3 long, jagged streaks. "Oompa Loompa claws," Charles whispered in fear.
What happened? I thought the portal to Loompa Land was secured. We don't know yet, sir, but we've had reports on Oompa activity in other sectors of the factory. Seal all exits. Call any defense forces that aren't on shit yet and get their asses on the hunt.
Charles sprinted across the factory floor.
And alert all civilian staff not to come to work today. Paid day off. Tell the media we have a mechanical failure, only if they ask.
Charles and the head of perimeter defense rounded a corner and found themselves confronted by a foul stench, one they both knew too well. They followed the smell into a stockroom and found the crates of baking supplies fouled by oozing masses of pustule-ridden muck. Bulging in the piles of foul liquid, there lay a large number of quivering, translucent pods. Charles' face went pale with horror.
Oompa Loompa eggs. How did they manage to get past your men long enough to lay a clutch of eggs?
Before the head of perimeter defense could reply, the 2 men heard a low, gibbering chuckle. It echoed around them, coming from seemingly nowhere. Charles oriented and found the source. A ventilation grate. They were in the vents. The mad chuckling turned into a mocking sing-song, inhuman in its tone. Oompa Loompa doopity-dee, we are here for little Charlie. Charles scowled and ordered his head of defense away. His place now was at the command room, organizing a defensive and securing the Loompa Land portal against any further activity. Charles closed the door to the stockroom, took a handgun from the holster under his suit jacket, and pondered on how some legacies never fully go away as he listened to the gibbering sing-song grow louder.